reinstated our school's Ecology Club, which I'm the president of, and then we're starting our pollinator garden. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Maddie.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right, hi, my name is Maddie Vasquez. I'm a sophomore at Bellevue University. And I would say my big project I did when I was in Zoo Academy in high school, but I took a class. I went to a sit-down restaurant, Texas Roadhouse in Papillion, and asked them to do a straws on request policy to reduce the plastic straw usage. Sorry, hold on. And then we just did the straws on request policy, and we reduced the plastic straw usage to 45%. And then I introduced educational materials like posters and flyers and stuff. And then we reduced it overall to 65%, which I think is pretty amazing. And yeah, that's basically what I did.
Awesome, thank you. And for recording purposes, I caught Carly right as she started explaining, but that is Carly Riatuso. She's from Bellevue West and she's a junior. Just for recording purposes, if anybody comes and watches the video, that's my fault. I'm still a little new to this recording thing. But to introduce myself, I am Baden Brumbaugh. I am a senior at Bellevue West High School. I do work with Carly occasionally in other school activities and for Green Bellevue a little bit. My proudest environmental achievement or impact or project or whatever you want to call it is I ended up starting a composting program at Bellevue West. For the duration of my junior year, it was the FBLA Community Service Project. It ended up being very successful after months and months of planning with the district and my principal. We ended up getting Bellevue West to have over 50% waste diversion in our lunchroom. And for a school of 1,600 students approximately, it was a really big deal. Currently, because of COVID, it is shut down, but we do have plans to restart it coming into the next school year. And with introductions out of the way, I'd like to introduce the first question that I'm just going to start everybody else on. So what is one piece of advice you'd give to a student thinking about starting an environmental project? And we'll keep going in the circle, so I'll pass it off to Carly first.
I would say like the number one thing, at least for me, is like just you have to get over that fear of like uncomfortableness. Because I think like the first step for me was I was so uncomfortable with, you know, starting a club. Like I had no idea how to do it. I didn't know how to ask. You know, you really have to push yourself beyond like your comfort level sometimes. I have to talk to a lot of people and I'm not always comfortable doing that. But it's always worth it. Another thing I would say is when you're starting projects, get started as soon as you can. And I'm dealing with this right now. Even though I did start planning for this months and months ago, it's happening later than I expected it to. And I'm sure Baden probably knows with the composting projects take a long time and you don't want to rush like things like this. Because in order for them to be successful, so I would say, yeah, go out of your comfort zone and plan ahead, make sure you're hitting deadlines, understand that great things take a long time.
Awesome, and then we can pass that question over to Maddie. If you need me to repeat it, Maddie, I can also do that as well.
It's about like what my advice to someone starting a project like this, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So when I was approaching Texas Roadhouse and the head of manager, I was so afraid to ask things. I was afraid to like communicate with him because he was like an adult. He's a person of authority. And if you're doing projects like these, you're most likely going to have to deal with adults. But don't let your age get in the way of that. Like you deserve as much respect and they will respect what you're saying. So don't be afraid. It's kind of similar to the other one, but you're going to have to deal with adults and all you have to do is act like an adult and they'll treat you like one. And don't be afraid to ask for things. If your project requires something, so mine required them to put up signage and required them, all of the servers, to start asking for straws instead of laying them. I was so nervous that no one was going to do it and that my project would be ridiculous and not work. But all you have to do is ask and be brave enough to ask, because there's a lot of people out there that share your same ideas And I was afraid, no, like no one else cared about straws and like no one cared about the environment, but that just isn't true. So my advice would be don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to talk to adults.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll kind of piggyback off of that a little bit. The advice I would give is plan ahead and kind of as they were saying, be ready to talk to adults. When I started, I had a plan. I tried to be as successful as possible and like, here's how I'm going to do it. But you also have to be ready to adapt. I never started a composting program. I had never done anything really involving kind of waste distribution or anything. So I ended up approaching my principal and saying, okay, here's the basic plan. I'm going to keep moving forward from here and I'll keep updating you. And it kind of took that coming in with a plan to kind of prove to him that I was serious about this, because a lot of adults and even students around you, if you don't have a plan, to them, you don't even have a project. And so kind of coming into it with an idea of what you want to do, and then having the willingness to work quickly and continually update your plan and being ready to adapt is probably the most important thing. I was very fortunate. We had started a coffee shop the year before and started minor composting. And so I had a contact at Hillside Solutions. Her name is Jillian Cromwell. She is served on Green Bellevue too. And so I was very fortunate to have somebody like her to reach out to be able to kind of convey what I wanted to say to my principal. And I'm already starting to see questions pop up in the chat, which is great. And so I will go in order of how they're coming in. And so the first question that we have is, what success is there in recruiting other students to environmental projects? And then I'll pass it back over to Carly to start on that one.
I think there is tons and tons of success. You want to get as many people involved as possible. I mean, just for Ecology Club, which I think you could consider that an environmental project, just because it involves so many things. Recruitment is hard, but the more members we get, stuff gets so much easier. Like for example, we're doing a Plarn drive right now. If you guys don't know what that is, basically it's yarn made out of plastic bags, and we're collecting plastic bags from our school and we are turning it into yarn, which we're then going to crochet and sell as like tote bags and like bucket hats and mats and stuff. Another thing I found out that it takes a really long time. This project is going a lot slower than I thought it would, but it would not be going at the speed that it is if I didn't have so many people involved helping me. You know, projects they seem so much easier. Like I don't know, I don't know what the word is, but before you do them, they seem so much easier. But when you really get into it, they're not as easy. And, you know, you think a lot of times probably that you can handle things on your own, but you always need other people to help you. And there's so much power in numbers. So I think it's especially important to have that support.
Awesome. Then we can pass it over. Oops.
Yeah. So I think recruiting more people is also beneficial, because when you succeed with others and you can share that enjoyment and that love for what you're doing. And then also when you don't succeed, you also have someone there to also like support you and like be there for your ups and downs. And then also recruiting more people, more students, you'll surprise yourself and how many people there are actually out there sharing your ideals. And I find that like having other people around me who love the environment and want to save it as much as I do, I find that even more motivating to keep doing what I'm doing and finding these students. Because in like my projects, I recruited a lot of like younger kids to help me count the straws. And it was so great because they were like, it's like inspirational to what we're doing and seeing our success. And it gets more kids and more people turned on to what we're trying to accomplish and everything that we're trying to do.
Awesome. I would say that for recruiting, especially with the composting program at Bellevue West, it was a struggle. I assumed that because I actually wanted to start in an elementary school, because, you know, little kids, you know, if you kind of tell them to do something and you can offer like a pizza party or something, and they're all in it, you know, completely new. With high schoolers, I assumed that especially at Bellevue West with 1,600 students and everybody just trying to get through everything, that nobody would really want to be involved. But when I talked to Mr. Rolfs, our principal, he wanted me to get as many clubs involved as possible. And so basically what I did is I went up to club leaders, club sponsors, such as teachers, and basically said, would your group be interested in helping with this program? And to my surprise, most of them said yes. They just needed a little direction on what job they'd be doing. And what I found is the education portion of these projects is important. If people don't know what you're doing, they're not going to want to get involved. I ended up taking club representatives from a few different clubs at our school, such as ROTC and some math honor society and some other honor societies, and then even DECA at one point, and kind of just tossed them all in to make a video with me, kind of educating the student body. And it turns out that that ended up being very successful, because if people see somebody they know doing these projects, they'll want to get involved too. And for just about every kid who said, okay, well, I'm not going to participate in this, or I'm going to avoid doing this, there was always a student right behind them who said, oh, I really want to get involved. I want to get my name out there and kind of do something important. And so that success in recruiting was really surprising to me. But I kind of just learned that getting a few groups of people that everybody kind of knows together and kind of establishing that recognition of, oh, this person's doing it, I should probably do it, was really important. And so moving on to the next question, it is, how do you balance accessibility for the disability community with your environmental work? And if you guys need a minute to answer that one, I'm kind of ready to answer that one myself. And so I'll just kind of start. Basically, when I started that composting program and reaching out to groups, I ended up, just like I did for the coffee shop program we did the year before, we do have a special needs department at Bellevue West. And so I approached the teachers and said, what type of stuff would I be able to have the special ed department participate in? Because a lot of the times, especially with the coffee shop, we actually had them, with guidance of one of our project leaders that year, actually have them make and give coffee to students who were ordering. And that same sort of thing kind of happened with the composting program. I said, here's everything that we are doing. Is there anything that you believe they would like to participate in? And actually, it was kind of easy. I showed them, I educated them on what we were doing with the composting program, and they were able to come down during lunch hours and kind of watch the process go, and even help educate people as the composting program was going on. So like if you see somebody who's putting something that's non-compostable, such as a plastic wrapper, into the trash can, they can politely tell them that doesn't go there and it actually goes there. And giving them the opportunity to kind of lead students or be leaders themselves was really important. Those opportunities the special ed department always loves at Bellevue West. And so kind of being able to give them that opportunity to show how things are done and kind of be an instructor rather than somebody just following was really awesome.
Baden, can you repeat the question?
Yes, it is. How do you balance accessibility for the disability community within your environmental work?
Okay, I can answer this one. So with disabilities and plastic straws, it's a really hot topic because of the fact that plastic straws are easier for them to use. And that's why I went with straws on request policy rather than banning straws altogether. On my signage, it actually says, please have plastic straws be available to those in the disabled community. And so when you're doing an environmental project in general, you always have to think about everybody that's affected by this. And you can't just go in like just about the environment, because the only way you can sell people on saving the environment is making it human oriented. Show them what it does for them. So you just have to be aware of your the entire community. So yeah, you just have to make exceptions somewhere and then get them involved as much as you can.
Awesome. And then do we still have Carly here, or she might have had to go do something really quick? Oh, we're getting there. Okay, she said 1 second. Well, I guess then while I wait for her really quick, I'll kind of go on a little bit more of kind of how this ended up working out with the student body. Oh, is she back? Awesome. Oh, okay. We got
Sorry.
Okay,
okay, so I can't say that I've really specifically done. I think it's an excellent question and something that I will definitely take into consideration. A lot of my projects have been just within Ecology Club. And I mean, we don't have any disabled members within Ecology Club. Whether it's just, they weren't interested, or whether or not we're not marketing that well enough. But I mean, that's a really good question. I wish I had something better to offer, like Baden and Maddie do, but I think there's a lot of things that you if you're talking about like if they're able to help with these projects, I mean, I guess, yeah, Baden kind of mentioned that. I think like it doesn't really take, you don't have to be um like a certain, like there doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be able to walk to help with like environmental issues. You don't have to be able to use your hands. You don't have to be neurotypical. There's so many different ways to help that I think that your like abilityness does not hold you back at all. Like just because you're disabled, or maybe you can't, do all the same things that most people do, you can still make a huge, huge impact. And I obviously plan to do that. But honestly, that's such a good question. And I will really, really take that into account when pushing some more projects in the future. Just right now, I feel like it's been really internal, so I haven't had that chance to reach out, but that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome. And so the next question I see is there value for you to your future life work in doing work now for the environment? And I can start that off, or I can pass it over to Maddie. I'll pass it over to Maddie first, then to Carly, then to me. All right.
Awesome. It's in terms of my future and what I've done with that project, it has been astronomical, not only in getting me to where I think I want to be in my future, but putting it on my college resume and talking to my professors currently right now. Like that project has gotten me on some of their research projects. And it just overall, it's good to cultivate the resume, for the future job applications. And so my project was through science fair, and I won quite a few awards with it. So that's also just like another added bonus. So yes, it's so important for your futures. It's solely beneficial. It also gets you in contact with people. So like I've made a lot of connections through this project with other like environmental groups that were working with plastic straws. I think Baden can also attest that he's made some connections with his as well. Everything is just beneficial. It's like connecting, linking, and then also your own personal experience. Now I can say that I have organized a successful project in my community, and that it's going to, and then in the future I'm going to be able to use that knowledge and apply it to what I want to do in terms of like environmental conservation. So yes, it's so important, and it will only benefit you.
Okay. For me, there's extreme value. I think just personally, for as long as I can remember, environmentalism has been such a important thing to me. I mean, this is a problem we need to address now. We have a climate crisis, and Maddie made great points about, yes, you can put this on your resume. Yes, this shows how responsible you are, and it opens opportunities for other things, but also you are doing, it seems so small, but these things, if everyone were to do them, are huge. They make such a bigger impact than I think that you realize. And this planet is our future. Our ability to protect it is our ability to stay alive, for our kids, our grandchildren to stay alive. I think my thing is it just feels great to know that I'm doing something for an issue that I care about. Beyond high school, I don't plan to go into a field that has to do specifically with the environment. I plan to have a minor in environmental studies, but I want to go into like the medical field, but I still think it's so applicable. I'm learning how to garden. I can have a garden when I'm older. I can do these things when I'm older. And I think it's important to realize that you don't have to do this for the rest of your life. This doesn't have to be your occupation, but it's something that's important and you should care about it. And you can do those both simultaneously. You can impact the environment, you can impact your community while not having an occupation within that area. So I'd say I very much value it for my future.
All right. I would have to say that kind of on Maddie's route, I ended up starting this project. It was the community service project for FBLA. And so that kind of served as my kind of bouncing off pad. I'm going to be honest, I was never really that in tune with environmental things, and I'm not going to pretend I was. But going into this project, when I first did the coffee shop the year ago, the composting seemed really interesting to me. We started with just compostable coffee cups, and that was kind of a really neat thing because I started talking to Hillside more and kind of learning about what they do with compostable products, and I thought it was really neat. And our community service project had just ended, and I decided, okay, well, I want to take this over. I want to take what we have in this little coffee shop here and put it in our entire school and kind of see what happens. And so I ended up getting recognition for that. It got first at the state level and then third at national FBLA level. So the recognition and building the resume was kind of done there. It was a neat bouncing off pad. But what it did that was more important is it kind of served as a leadership opportunity and a chance to kind of broaden my horizons. I was a very businessy and only focus on business thing, and Carly can probably attest to that. I very much kind of focus on what work is in front of me, and I kind of ignore anything else that's happening around me. And so being involved in an environmental project was really a way for me to broaden my horizons. It served as a leadership opportunity. It served as a way for me to kind of learn more about something I never really looked into. And it's also served to gather connections, as Maddie said. The only reason I'm here speaking in front of you today, setting up a youth environmental panel, is because after setting up the composting program, I received a lot of support from Green Bellevue. I received a lot of support from Green Bellevue during the project. They were our biggest donor towards covering the expenses that the composting program had. And later I was offered a spot on their board of directors. And so these connections, this leadership, the recognition, the building the resume, the broadening your horizons, all of that has come from just one environmental project, and I can't wait to do many more. And I don't see any more questions right now, but if anybody has any questions off the top of their head, I will definitely hear them in the chat. If not, I have a few more that I have written down that I can put in. And so I will say one of those now. Let's see. All right. What was one challenge you didn't expect to have while trying to start a project or a project that you've done or a club or any of those sorts of things? And I'll pass it off to Carly first, kind of back how we were at the beginning.
I would say, again, as I stated earlier, is just like it would take so much time. I thought these things were going to be done so much earlier than they were. I mean, the pollinator garden, it's about where I thought it would be, but it's still late. The Plarn project that we're doing, it's taking way longer than I thought it would. I really underestimated it. Again, things really do take a long time. So plan accordingly and understand that it will take time, and you will need patience, and it takes a lot of dedication and time. But so I would say.
I would say my biggest thing that like kind of surprised me was my original idea for my project was drastically different than like what it ended up with. Like at first it was like going to be like survey based, and there was going to be a lot more to it. But as we went along, we found that like we made the most impact by like reducing that. So I had like, the thing would be like I went in with an idea and I came out with something else, which grew into something absolutely beautiful. So just being able to adapt and like go with the flow of what your project is telling you, because your project will kind of take on its own kind of like steamroll and you're kind of like chasing after it. But just be prepared for that. Like your project is gonna flow with like depending on what you're doing, who you're working with, things like COVID and weather, it all just varies. You have to just be flexible with that. And I think that was like my most surprise, because usually when I plan something, it goes exactly according to plan. But this time it didn't, but it turned out to be better than actually what I wanted.
Can I add one thing onto that? That is an excellent point, because my original plan, like my very, very original plan was to actually plant a tree. And I had talked to Jillian Cromwell about that. And, she was like, yeah, that's great. But what we really need right now is pollinator gardens. And I know a ton of people that will help you with that. And I would have never considered that option on my own. A tree and a pollinator garden are very, very different, but I'm really glad that that's the path that I took. So yeah, great point.
All right. I would have to say one of the challenges I didn't expect. When I started the program, most things that I did for FBLA over my years, I never really had to have permission from the school or administrators. And I originally planned for the project to be in elementary schools because, as I kind of mentioned earlier, telling elementary schoolers to get involved with something, if I throw up a pizza party, they're all in and they're ready to hear it. With high schoolers, it's a little bit different. And so I really wanted to start my program on a lower age scale and then kind of work my way up the level of schools. But upon asking the administration about it, they were like, well, we're not just going to let you throw a composting program into a school that you're not at and able to monitor constantly. We want to see that it works at your school and then move on. And so that was kind of something I really wasn't expecting. I ended up talking to Mr. Rolfs, and he was like, okay, now we have to contact the administration and let the administration know, because originally they all thought that it would be district covered. What ended up being a way I adapted that is I said, actually, we're going to reach out to the community and we're going to try to fund that that way. And once that was mentioned, everything moved a lot faster, but I definitely had to adapt. It was a very big challenge starting in a high school first, but it ended up working out very well. And really quick, just so I can mention it, I just saw it in the chat. I have two things to cover. The passport code has not been mentioned yet, and I will definitely mention that now because we're 30 minutes in. So really quick, let me get that pulled up. One moment. Gotta get over here. Sorry, I have like a ton of tabs open. I'm on my brother's laptop, not mine. All right, getting there. All right. The passport code for today is Youth Challenge, which I will pull up on the screen now. So you can enter this in for points for passport. Even though passport is ending on the 15th, we are going to have options to view recordings and meetings such as these at a later date. So if you have a friend, if you're an instructor somewhere and you have students that you want to show, these should hopefully be available later. I don't exactly have the exact date on when these videos will be up, but they definitely will be. So be on the lookout for that. But Youth Challenge, no spaces, no caps, is our passport code for today. And if Steve has anything he'd like to say about the recordings being up, I know he knows a little bit more than I do, but.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
They'll be on the Green Bellevue website at some point, maybe even yet this week. And they're going to be adding, because Green Bellevue has a YouTube channel. Actually, you can probably go directly there, even if you don't find it on the Green Bellevue website. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing this now, but I will put it in the chat. And really quick, while I do that, I know a lot of people have left and joined so far. And so while we wait for more questions and things, it might be a good time for us to say a little bit, if there's anything else that we haven't said about our projects, if we want to do that really quick, and then we'll jump back to the question. So if there's anything about our projects between me, Carly, and Maddie, that any of you guys would like to share that we haven't covered that you think is important, this would definitely be a good time for that. So I'll pass it off to Carly first.
Okay, I want to just give like a little bit more background about like some stuff that I am doing involved in. I mentioned earlier, reinstated Ecology Club at our school. I'm the president of our Ecology Club. I'm also involved in Students for Sustainability, which is pretty much just like an advocacy group for environmental issues. like with a bunch of different students from different high schools in Omaha. I'm trying to think. I helped Baden like a little tiny bit last year with the composting project. I just represented another club to help out with that. Obviously Baden had like a huge role. I mean, next year actually I plan to take that from Baden. So hopefully I can say I did a little bit more. And with the Ecology Club, we're obviously doing the Plarn thing right now. We're doing the pollinator garden. We also do like educational things. Like we have at our meetings, we will show like presentations and stuff. Off some things I'm thinking off the top of my head is we had a presentation on environmental racism. We also did a presentation meeting with Brent Crampton, and he came in and talked about how to properly recycle things. That was one thing I feel like a lot of people don't know, that you can't really recycle every plastic. You have to make sure that you can recycle it. Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think about, we do a lot of things. Our main goal is education and action. So we want to get stuff done, and we want to make sure that our members are informed. Another thing, I actually have them right here. I feel like I should mention it. So with Students for Sustainability, they do this thing where we do like a little postcard thing. It's actually really, really cool. I was going to hand these out to Ecology Club on Friday, but it's basically just like this little packet, and it has like postcards in it that members can write on, and senators like numbers and addresses that they can write to, and a list of like bills and what they mean and like what they do. So our members can read about that. And then obviously in Students for Sustainability, so our members in that club can read about it. And I feel like that's a really good way to get people involved. And it's super, super easy because you're just writing on a postcard, but it's so important to take these issues, obviously to our government. A lot of their policies are what shape what people are able to do with the environment and what they're not able to do. So that's another thing that we do, but I'm just trying to think about anything else. Pollinator garden is not really, I don't know, we haven't planted it yet. So it's in its beginning stages.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I think I'll kind of go next, and then I'll give Maddie the opportunity. And so with the composting program that we ended up running at Bellevue West, I did mention a little bit earlier, it went through a very experimental process to start. I ended up contacting a ton of the school administration. I worked really closely with Julian Cromwell and Brent Crampton both. I had to go visit several schools that were doing composting. Funnily enough, I work for Abraham Catering, and somebody who was catering with me happened to be a teacher at Brownell Talbot, where they had just started composting. And so I was talking about my project, and she reached out to me and said, well, how about you come visit my school and get an idea of what it's like? And I also learned that day that private schools and public schools have a very different way of handling these sorts of things, because when you have a private school, the schools are very in tune to doing these programs, and they're more administration led. Whereas reaching out to the Bellevue district and saying, we want to do this, they kind of said, okay, well, let's make sure that you as students are the ones leading it and it doesn't fall back on our tables. And I think that's a really important difference to recognize, because schools and staff starting something is very different than students starting something. As students, we have the power to communicate better with our friends than anybody else. And so when a teacher tells you that you're going to be having to compost during lunch, you're kind of hesitant, and you'll do it because, you don't want to ruin your standing with that teacher. But when you're with a student, it becomes on a much more personal level. And a little bit about what we finally ended up doing is we ran a soft opening during the week. Hillside Solutions was there that entire week to inform students. We had students from several different clubs and organizations taking over each lunch period to inform the student body on what to do, which ended up being very helpful because after that first week, almost every student knew exactly what they were doing. We had signs above trash cans telling them what to compost. And so the process kind of went by pretty quickly. It kind of just led to an assembly line. Dump your composting here. Once you dump your composting, dump your whole tray and then stack it and move on. And it went by really fast. And our custodial staff ended up being really appreciative of this because what a lot of people didn't expect was with it being student-led, the students took over taking the composting out to the back and hauling all of that compost out. And so what ended up happening was the custodians had less trash to take out because the students were taking over 56% of diverted waste out themselves. And so not only did it give students an opportunity to help the environment, but our custodial staff also got a bit more of a break than they ever could have expected. And so that's a little bit more background about my project, and I'll pass it over to Maddie if she'd like to say a few words.
Sure. So a little bit more background on mine. So I did mine with Zoo Academy, as I mentioned before. And so at the same time that my project was going on, the zoo was also doing a program. Oh, I can't. It was very similar to what I was. They were partnering with restaurants and trying to do the same thing I was. And so I had to go through all of the zoo's administration to get okays on our flyers. I had to get Texas Roadhouse signed up with the zoo. And if you go to Texas Roadhouse, actually on the front door, my logo is still on there. And I also had to get my logo approved. So there still is a lot of administrative kind of things with it, and that's okay. I found that since it was my first project ever, adults kind of know a little bit more on that side of things. So make sure you're open to everyone's critiques and everyone's opinions, because my original logo and my original flyers, were designed by me, so they weren't that great. And so I had a graphic designer come in and give me tips on what to do, what not to do, which has helped me with new graphics as well. Also, mine was a lot of it wasn't through a school, it was through a restaurant, which was an outside body, which is completely different because you have to work with adults. I had to work with the wait staff, and if you've ever met a waiter, it's a really hard job. I wait there now. But getting them on board with not immediately laying the straw down was also a challenge. We had to do an educational training. I made a PowerPoint. They all came in. I went through it, got a lot of them on board. And there was also a lot of wait staff who didn't do it. And there's just some ups and downs to a project when dealing with other people, which is totally fine. So yeah.
Awesome. We do have another question. And this question is a little less long than most of the ones that we've had, but it definitely is one that might take you guys a minute to think of, or if you've already thought about it, but it is what inspires you? And so I can leave a minute. If we want, I can pass it off to Carly right away and we can kind of go in the session that we've gone. Oh, awesome.
Again, this just kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think what inspires me is just my genuine concern for the environment. Maybe it's more of a fear than an inspiration. I'm kind of scared of what will happen if we don't take initiative now. I guess you could say that's an inspiration, but I am scared for the future of our planet if we don't take care of it. Obviously, I would love to do this anyways, even if we weren't, in the middle of a climate crisis, just because I think nature itself is gorgeous and we should take care of that. All these things are what is allowing for us to live. So I think that's what inspires me.
Personally, what inspires me is stuff exactly like this. This youth panel is what inspires me. So I went through a thing where all through elementary and middle school, I was I'm going to go to school for biology. I'm going to go with Zoo Academy. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then the world around me kind of influenced me. And I didn't think anybody else cared. And it was just so discouraging until I got on this project, and I saw that there's other people out there, people like Baden and Carly, and how they're all out there doing stuff. And the fact that you're here right now listening to this panel inspires me, that there's other people out there, there's youth out there seeing these climate strikes, and like girls like Greta that are out there fighting actively for this, and that I'm not alone in my passions and my struggles in terms of the environment, that there's a whole community out there working together on different things like composting and plastics, and it's beautiful to see. And then I presented my project at this Arbor Day festival with all of the OPS elementary schools. And I gave a presentation about single-use plastics and my project, and just to see the looks on those 7-year-olds' faces and how they looked at me and they were like, yes, when I get home, I'm going to write a poster. And one kid, a little 8-year-old, came and she was like, I am never going to use a plastic straw again, which probably isn't true. But right there in that moment, I saw in their eyes that they wanted it and that they knew what I was talking about. And that's what inspires me, is fellow people that want to make a difference as much as I do.
Perfect. I would have to say what inspires me is, it's kind of a little background on me. When I came into high school, I was a very quiet person. I was the kid who sat in the back. I didn't want to raise my hand. I knew the answers, but I didn't want to raise my hand, I swear. But what ended up happening was I joined FBLA my freshman year, and I started to get out of my shell a bit. And what a lot of people told me was, you need to get out there. You are untapped potential. And of course, me sitting here now, being somebody who's led a composting program, who's done a whole bunch of different things around our school and community, who isn't afraid to run a panel, I would definitely have to say what inspires me is trying to push more people to be like me. At a point in my life, I was untapped potential. I really didn't think I was going to ever communicate with that many people. I kind of just thought I was going to do my thing and stick to myself. But I've been much happier doing this type of stuff. And so, along with kind of relating this back to the environment and composting program, is I was able to reach out to students who had never led before. They might have been part of different organizations and different clubs, but most of them just wanted to kind of show that they are somebody who can make a difference. Such as I reached out to some people in ROTC, and we had one kid, he's part of ROTC, wasn't in any leadership role or anything, but he goes, can I be the ROTC representative for your project? Can I be the guy that you contact for anything about this? And I said, sure. And for the most part, everybody went along with that. And so that kind of leads to inspire me. I want to approach these students who are just like me my freshman year, who kind of sat in the back and are just kind of waiting for that somebody to give them that nudge. Because once you give them that nudge, most of the time they don't go back. And I think that's something really important to know. And the next question is, what is your next goal? And I'll kind of start with that because that kind of leads into a question that I was going to ask. Kind of do you have any plans to expand your environmental projects or do anything new? And I'm going to answer this first because mine and Carly's answers will be a little bit the same. So my next goal would be to expand the composting program that was started at Bellevue West. Of course, I'm a senior, so I will be graduating and leaving it all behind, kind of. I'm going to be back in Bellevue West a little bit during my freshman year of college to put the composting program back up to what it was, and kind of pushing Carly and whatever team she chooses, kind of setting them back up to where we were, because I feel like I'd be doing them a disservice to say, you have a year to do this project, but you have to spend the whole year restarting it. And so the next plans for that, I'm going to kind of leave that up to Carly, but my next goal would be to restart the composting program at Bellevue West, and I'm going to be in the Business Honors Academy at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And because it's a smaller academy, it might be a potential place to start putting in programs such as composting, just on a smaller level. And if it works on the academy level, maybe pushing out from there. Of course, I know a lot of you know Kat Warner. She's most likely started a few things there that I might ask her about at Lincoln as well. So those are kind of my next goals going forward, and I'll pass that off to Carly.
Okay, yeah. What's composting, reinstating that, expanding that, definitely one of my next goals. Also, just to continue the pollinator garden, one of my biggest things is that I want to ensure that Ecology Club and the gardens that we start are not neglected when I leave. I want to make sure that I leave those in good hands. And, you know, for the next years, continue to expand the food garden so it can support more people. We can distribute more food. Another goal that I have in terms of fundraising for Ecology Club and just doing something that would, I don't know, overall help is next year I planned to do a shoe drive. And that's where people can take in their old pairs of shoes. And then basically what we do is we collect a set amount of shoes, we store them, and then like within, let's say we said we're going to do it in 3 months. And there's a company that we can work through to do this. Then they'll come and pick up those shoes and they'll give us money for those shoes. And with those shoes, they'll take those old shoes and basically upcycle them and give those shoes to kids who need shoes. So that's one of the things I plan to do next year. And then obviously expand the gardens and such. But and obviously actually this weekend I'm meeting with the other officers in Ecology Club to come up with some ideas for next year. So I definitely want to do a lot, continue to do a lot.
So my university's biology and environmental science program is brand new. So I'm also the president of my university's environmental sciences club. So my goal for the next year is to get that up and running, and then getting other students involved and then starting projects with that. My senior thesis is also going to be about restoring a lake habitat out on the outside of Omaha that I'm going to be able to completely redesign it and introduce different native plants. And so, yeah, starting new things is probably what mine is. COVID kind of shook up my straws project because no one wants to drink out of glass anymore without a barrier between it, which I get. So I'm going to wait a little bit on that one because originally my plan was to expand to the rest of Shadow Lake Mall. But I'm going to wait till COVID dies down a little bit before I get started on that one. But yeah.
So to kind of get us on a track of kind of reminding that we're students throughout doing this, I have a question that I'm going to present. Being a student who's doing environmental programs or trying to impact the environment in any way they can, how do you manage that with your schoolwork? I know, or schoolwork or other extracurriculars, because I feel like that's something really important that people like us starting out might not have thought about or didn't think about enough when we were starting these things. So I'll pass it off to Carly and we'll just keep going in our order and I'll answer it at the end.
Yeah, that's a really good question because sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. I think it's very important for one to have a team. These things you might think that you can do them by yourself, but truly like you cannot. You need people to help you. I think also having people around you holds you accountable, but then also setting a schedule for yourself, like saying this Saturday I'm gonna work on this for this project. You know, on Wednesday I'm gonna contact these people. And then, you know, if you have to meet with a team, let's say like you say this Saturday on the 12th or something, we're going to go and talk about our project and plan out our project. And then this day we're going to go do this. It holds you accountable. So you feel like, you know, you set aside time for doing it. So you're not really thinking about anything else. It seems a little bit more manageable when you manage your time and you spread it out. So you're not doing everything at once. It's just little bits and pieces that adds up to this larger project. It feels like a lot less stress and it's easy to manage with your schoolwork, you know, when you're only working on it for maybe like 3 hours a week. So just plan in advance if you're planning to do a big project, because then it won't take as much time until you're like implementing the actual project.
So I'm a college soccer player and also a college student, which I don't think anyone here has done that yet, but college is a complete other level to high school. And being able to balance everything definitely is a challenge, but it's definitely not impossible. All you have to do is really, you have to think really long term. You can't think of in terms of like a couple weeks or a couple months. Like you need to look into the future and plan your work schedule around it. And it's just setting time and making it important. And luckily, all of my projects have been through like my classes in school. So it's just been another set of schoolwork. But if you're doing this completely like not in your curriculum, it's just planning it out, like I said before. But it's definitely possible.
So I started this composting program entirely extracurricularly. It was an FBLA project that I decided to lead my junior year. I definitely have to say I had a wake-up call. I'm very prone to procrastination. I do a lot of things. I had to drop my sports actually the year before because my responsibilities for FBLA and leading projects became so much. The important thing to know is you have to be willing to sacrifice if you're serious about something. The year prior, I had done a coffee shop program that we ended up putting composting into later on. But to stay on top of all my responsibilities for it, I ended up having to give up soccer, which I really did love. And then I ended up giving up track the next year because I thought maybe I could fit track, and then it didn't end up working out. But being willing to sacrifice and kind of, as Carly was kind of saying earlier, holding yourself accountable. I got lucky. My FBLA advisors definitely held me accountable when I wanted to procrastinate on this project. I would go to sleep one day after a busy day and say, oh, I can get back to it next week. But that isn't really how these sorts of things work. Because it's really easy to forget, because if you make a lot of progress in a short amount of time and then leave it off for a week or even a month in extreme cases, just about all your progress will have crumbled. So being able to kind of hold yourself accountable, having a team that will hold you accountable, or at least having people around you, even if they're not affiliated with anything with the project, just to keep you on track. Time management is one of the most important skills that you have when starting a project, and it's one of the most important skills you can have in life. I'm not in college yet. As Maddie said, college is probably a time where you're definitely balancing probably more than you have in high school. And so establishing these skills early, especially if you're wanting to start a program that you're serious about, you have to be willing to sacrifice, and you have to be ready to keep yourself on track. And so I will pull up another question here. I have a few written down. Of course, if anybody in here who is watching has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. So the next question I have is, was there ever somebody that did not buy into anything environmentally related or was really against doing your project that you ended up getting into it? And if so, how? If not, that's completely okay. And I'll kind of go first because it's kind of a weird question to ask, and as I go, it might make a little more sense. When addressing 1,600 students at Bellevue West, we definitely knew there would be students who would not buy into it. There are a lot of students who either don't want to do it because they're scared to come out and they're a bit shyer, or students who don't want to do it purely for the fact that they want to go against whatever is happening. And you'll encounter those people throughout life wherever you go. One way that we kind of adapted and got a lot more people to participate was our head custodians had the great idea to cover up the garbage cans around our common area at Bellevue West, making students go closer to our composting stations that went composting bin, trash bin, and then a tray stacking table. And sometimes offering those incentives or kind of pushing people in the right direction is the way to go, because it ended up causing a lot of students who definitely wouldn't have tried to compost. And we also offered free drinks at our coffee shop when it was running. So if we saw a student composting correctly and or showing their friend how to compost, we would offer them a coupon to go get a free drink at our coffee shop, which had other things such as hot chocolate and smoothies. And so offering incentives and also kind of giving people that little nudge, not forcing them exactly, but kind of telling them at least give it a shot, was definitely a way that we got a lot of people to buy into the project when they did not before. Whoever wants to go after that can go. Sorry.
Okay, I can go. I think my thing is I never really had anyone that was like severely against it, but there were a couple people that, weren't really sure if they wanted to do it. I think it is really important to establish a relationship with those people first, because establishing a relationship with someone builds trust, and then they kind of like give in a little bit more to what you're saying. So my whole thing with Ecology Club is I try really, really hard to let people know um, that they have friends like waiting for them at Ecology Club. Like, we are here to be their friend. We're here to help them, and we are here to educate them. Because a lot of people just don't know like what's going on. They don't know things about the environment, so they don't understand why it's so important. um, I think just providing a relationship with those people, showing them, like just being kind to them, don't be rude to them, um, like just educate them like in a nice way. Obviously, if they're, they hear what you're saying and they're not listening to you, the only thing you can do is ignore it. Like, but there are people who really do change their opinions on things if offer them, like if you offer to be their friend, you offer them a helping hand, and you offer them education. People do change. So I think that's what's important to me on that issue.
So particularly in my project, the only people that weren't really for my project was the wait staff, because it is kind of a disconvenience for them not, because if they ask them, they have to go all the way back, and it is a little bit of a hassle. But the way I got through them was like educating and try to accommodate them as much as possible, making, if they needed plastic straws, like had them at the waiting state, like the cash register station, so they didn't have to walk so far back. But outside of the project, experience I had just a couple weeks ago was I gave a presentation about Earth Day to the La Vista Mayor's Youth Council, and I had him in the first like 2 sentences of my speech, and then I just lost all of them. I had no eye contact. They kept interrupting me, asking me if I could finish like faster, like I was some disconvenience to them, educating them about Earth Day and what we're doing. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I went home and cried. But then like I thought about it, and there's always gonna be people like that in the world. No matter what you do, whether it's environmental or not, there's always gonna be people that don't want to listen to you or don't think your ideas are important. But you have to remember that there's also people who are. You just have to find the right audience. And also with the whole changing thing, like what Carly says, it's worth a try. Like my dad was really not like on this whole like climate change thing, and my mom's like, why do you fight with him? And I said, because I have to try. You have to give that effort and give them an opportunity to change. And don't get discouraged if someone doesn't want to listen to you, or they like call you names and stuff like that, because your ideas do matter, and there are people out there who do support you. And you just can't get negative, and you can't go down like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Is it even important? Because it is. And you know that, and there are people out there who also know that. So definitely take it with a grain of salt.
All right, I have one more question written down, and then if we have no more further questions, we can kind of wrap things up. But one question I would like to ask is, who would you recommend, say I'm a student who's just trying to start a program, who would you recommend reaching out to? Say it's organizations, schools specifically, and or in other cases, even ourselves. And I'll kind of go first. I would definitely say that if you are starting anything environmentally related, at least if you're in the city of Bellevue, or if you're not in the city of Bellevue, this is kind of a self plug here for all of us here. Green Bellevue is definitely a good place to go. We have students, we have adults, we have people who have been here for years, and people who are now just joining. And just about everybody here really loves involvement from students, and anybody around the community. And so in most cases, I think our contact information is pretty easy to find, and I'll even leave some closer towards the end when we wrap up. But Green Bellevue to start is an amazing place to go. We have people all over who are willing to help and kind of get you on the right track. And we'll keep contacting you to kind of get updates on how things are going, because we're all interested in what's going on around the community. And the final place that I kind of want to mention is Hillside Solutions. They started working a bit with Bellevue because of the composting program. They have a composting farm out, I think it's based in Gretna, but they do have directors of partnerships and things. So if you are a school or you're just trying to be a club and you're trying to learn a bit more and or try to do a whole composting program, they are definitely the people to reach out to. And so that's who I have so far.
I'm gonna have to agree with Baden. I would most definitely reach out to Green Bellevue. Also just reach out to people within your school. I think that you'll come to realize that your teachers, your principals, your deans, they all know a lot of people who know a lot of people. Talk to your family, talk to your friends. Like, you will be surprised by the amount of people within our community that work with things like this, that know people that you know. I would say also just like, again, a really good organization I'm a part of is Students for Sustainability. You know, you can sign up for newsletters, you can sign up to join Students for Sustainability. I think Students for Sustainability is a really good organization if you're trying to get involved and you don't really know how. They plan a lot of marches and stuff. They have a lot of contacts. I think it's really important to get involved in organizations like that, because they have so many contacts already. And just like following just like a lot of organizations like that, like some things I can think of the top of my head, or some organizations we have like around here. I know there's like, I know like the Sierra Club, like the Nebraska chapter. I'm sure you can contact them. They're huge. Like the Sierra Club is something I'm sure a lot of people already know about. I know there's Omaha Permaculture. They work with like doing gardens for communities, which is kind of something that I'm trying to do. There's so many organizations that you can just send them an email and say, hey, I'm a student trying to start up a project. Would you be willing to help me? And 9 times out of 10, they will be. Like, they want to help you. So really just ask around, email people as much as you can, because you will eventually get a response and someone will be willing to help you.
So a couple ones I have, obviously we've already mentioned Green Bellevue, and then also your teachers and stuff like that. We all know a teacher at our school who loves the environment and who's super passionate about it, and get involved with them. But also a couple new ones. The Urban Bird and Nature Alliance is they work with a lot of nature stuff. I'm an intern there now, and the head person loves projects and would love to help with, like, we're really big into pollinator gardens and tree planting. Another one would be the Arbor Day Foundation is another really great one. They're really well funded, and they have so many great connections. Another one would be the Omaha Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium. They have a whole like just program for this kind of stuff, and they would be more than willing to help. Oh God, I had another one, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the ones I've mentioned are absolutely phenomenal.
Well, it's honestly kind of great you say that, because I was just about to, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to leave my Green Bellevue email up. And this is for the recording as well as anybody here. If any of you have any more questions for, say, me, Carly, or Maddie, you can send me an email. And if it's a question for Carly or Maddie, let me know that in the email and I will reach out to them personally and kind of get you in contact with them. But for now, I don't really want to touch any weird waiver signing stuff. So I'm just going to share my email and then go on from there. So I will share it right now. I'll just type it into the thing. If you have not seen yet, the passport code for tonight is Youth Challenge, no capitals, no spaces. But
that was a great point. That all three of us, I think, would be more than willing. We're all very experienced, and we all have really great connections to people. Like, I'm also an executive director on Green Bellevue. I'm an intern at Urban Bird and Nature Alliance. If you get in touch with Baden, I will be more than willing to help you. Like, I know exactly how it feels to be starting out and how nervous it might be. But yeah, any of us would be also another great resource.
Yeah, and the one final thing I'd have to say before we wrap this up is we all have a different set of skills here. We've all kind of dabbled in different parts of the environmental impact community. And there are also a ton more people on Green Bellevue who have covered many different areas than even us. And so I would definitely say it's a great idea. Reach out if you have any questions or if you're trying to start a project, because we will find somebody to help you if we don't know ourselves. It's definitely a intimidating thing starting a compo or starting any sort of initiative. As a high schooler, a college student, or even below that. And if you're below that trying to start a program like this, more power to you. That's amazing. But even though it seems intimidating at first, once you get the ball rolling, it starts to feel more natural. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll say, man, I wonder why this was so intimidating. That's basically all I have. I would like to thank Carly and Maddie for coming out and doing this with me. Definitely having more people was a lot more fun and way better for a program like this. So thank you both. So yeah, and then do you guys have any final things you'd like to say, or are we good to go?
The only final thing that I would say is be brave, don't hesitate, and don't wait. Like you said, it doesn't matter how old you are, what grade you are. Just if you have an idea, do it. There are plenty of people out there that will support you, and just be brave, be bold. The world needs people like you. The youth is what is going to get us through this climate crisis. And yeah, so thank you for being here as well.
All right. I think that's everything. Carly, do you have anything final you'd like to say? Yes or no? All right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. It was a ton of fun answering questions and kind of talking about our experiences. Again, my email is badenb@greenbellevue.org. If you have any questions for Maddie, Carly, or I would be happy to pass them on to them if they need it, or answer your question myself if it is towards me. I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you all for coming. Hope you all are winning Passport if we have anybody doing Passport out here. And have a great rest of your nights.